What do you think is the most overrated part of being a CEO?
The glamour. The moment that you have to choose between the two, that's where it goes wrong already. You can't do that anymore. You need to take 1, 2, 3 steps back. If I would knee-jerk react to that person, what would I break on the other side?
Mike.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Just before we jump in, what might be helpful for the audience is if you could just quickly introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
So I'm Mike Camerling, CEO of Aevi, and Aevi is one of the few, if not the only, neutral orchestration platform for in-person payments. And what that means is for people not that familiar with it, what we do is whenever you tap your card or your phone on a payment terminal, all the way until it comes back with you've been approved or you have paid, all that communication, all that orchestration is what we do in the background between the many parties in that chain.
Brilliant. So you're the guys that make it happen.
You can say that.
And you've been at Aevi since the foundation of the business. So tell us about how it started. What's the backstory there?
So Aevi was at that time part of a much bigger corporate, Winkor Nixdorf at the time. They were doing some really innovative stuff. They mainly focused on banking and retail solution, but in the far pockets, there were initiatives on payments. So at that time, they had a payments gateway. They were managing ATMs, which they still do today. And they managed to win a project for a new generation of payment terminals based on Android, which is many years ago, which was very, very innovative at that point in time. And especially very ambitious because they never had made a payment terminal before.
Right.
So we did that. We embarked on it. And against all odds, we pulled that off. And then the CEO of Winkor Nixdorf at the time went, there must be something here. This whole payments world is exciting, but I don't think it should be part of the bigger enterprise. We will carve it out. We will find a minority investor, more payments oriented, that can guide us a bit through the landscape. And that's how Aevi got carved out, and Aevi became Aevi.
Why Aevi?
So Aevi, actually the name, took us a while to find it.
Right.
It is one of the great memories I have actually with a very small branding agency. They had, I think, 200 names on a whiteboard with Aevi right in the middle, a little bit manipulated there.
Yeah,
but Aevi, because it had a nice sound to it, and the word actually meant the start of a new era in, don't pin me down on it, Icelandic or Nordic language. And we found that very fitting. And then, of course, the URLs were still available, the brand we could play with, and everybody instantly loved it. It was almost a gut feeling like that's the one.
Yeah, I can imagine. Isn't it funny though? You get to the name and everyone gets excited, and then it's like, right, is the URL available?
Yeah. It was. We were lucky there, but
the next practical question.
Absolutely.
So you transitioned from a corporate business into an investor-backed high growth business, yes. Right? That must have been such a fascinating journey. How did that actually happen in reality?
Yeah, that was, like I said, so the vision of the then CEO was to say, okay, I need a proof point that this is a viable payments business, and we need to have a party in there that knows what they're doing in that space and can say, okay, this has a future. So we found the current partners, HPE Growth. They became minority investors, still on the story we had at that time, which was the smart payment terminal. So more hardware-driven scenario. Little did I know at that time that those two parties are very different in how they operate, right?
Course,
so
yeah.
You have your enterprise with their perspective, their drivers and what they want to see, even though, yes, this is the little speedboat that needs to prove something else, which is, of course, what the minority PE investor wants. But those views don't necessarily align, or in our case, hardly ever aligned. And that was a big learning exercise to get through.
And what was the rub there? Can you kind of give us an example of where that came to life?
Yeah. Of course, when you have an enterprise, they might have multiple investments, multiple entities, daughter companies, whatever you call it, but they all serve ultimately the enterprise, right? Where an investor that comes solely for Aevi wants to serve only Aevi,
Right.
and rightly so. And that's no different, of course, than the people in the team, myself, and not saying that that was a bad situation to have, because we were very grateful for the first year of the enterprise, because you get your protection there as well.
Of course.
But the bottom line is that I always say jokingly, you can't be half pregnant, right? You can only serve one direction and one direction well. And if you do both directions half, then you, for lack of a better word, plod along.
Yeah. And there must be a period where you have to do that, though, right? Where you still, from a regulatory perspective, you're still part of the group, but ultimately your strategy is dictated by the growth capital firm, I assume.
Yeah, it was for us. It was for a long time a sort of difficult balance to keep, right? Because the way, and it depends. Every company is different. Every setup is different. But who has the hardest push in the board will determine the way this goes forward, right? And that's I actually think. Looking at the complexity of it, we did that really well, but it actually takes a lot of time. So if you're in my position, for example, I went back from being busy with stakeholder management for a day and a half, 2 days a week, because you were on another call here, another call there, etc., etc., to now we're only with HP, with the PE firm, to several hours a week, because they want to go fast. They get us, and everything is aligned, right? So that makes the difference.
Yeah, I can imagine. And can you maybe explain a little bit more about organizationally and from a business perspective, what practically changed once you became a fintech rather than part of a big corporate?
What didn't change is almost the answer there.
Right.
I think one of the major things what had to change was culture. Culture is it's not saying the corporate culture is bad, but it's a different culture, because you have more time. You can wait for certain things, or you can strategically decide, I'm not going to do this today because whatever the reasons are. Where in a fintech, you want to do everything today if you can, and latest tomorrow, and not necessarily wait for months, and it might come, because we don't necessarily have that luxury, because on your own you're not, in the beginning, not that stable, right? So that's also what I meant. If you have the sort of umbrella of an enterprise, yeah, it's very good because you're protected,
Right.
but it doesn't work towards standing on your own 2 feet and really learning, this is a whole different game, right? I need to be faster. So the major thing that had to change was attitude and culture, saying, no, this is a whole different game. It's fast. It's agile.
Yeah. And I presume that there was a lot of people engagement, people management, potentially people changes to enable that to happen. Can you maybe give us an example of where that played out?
Yeah, you can see that in all areas. I think a lot of the areas where we made optimizations over the years, and especially the last 2 years, is in engineering and operations, right? So you scale that back to your 24/7 support services and all of those things,
Right.
but you just simply cannot have that redundant, or you can't have too much. If I say fat on it, that sounds very, very negative, and that's not what I mean. But you need to be super lean, right? Because the cost base for us and what we're trying to achieve, dictates that, right?
Yeah.
So everything is about, break even, profitability, and those things. So, then you get into this whole a reorganization in terms of who are your talents, and can do 2 people that are really talented or better suited for the job more than the 3 people you have today.
Yeah, right. Yes, I suppose it's easy to assume when you think about that transition from a big corporate into a nimble, lean fintech. It's easy to assume that in the corporate, the focus is more about kind of product top line revenue growth, whereas in the fintech, it's probably more about bottom line and really managing things carefully. Is that the reality from your experience?
It's a mix.
Right.
So in the corporate environment, we, as I said, we're very much expected to help the corporate as well, because we were costing them money, so they could also dictate what we were doing. And when a corporate has a big enterprise as a customer that they serve globally, where Aevi, for example, would have to only do a country with 4 stores, that would be loss-making for Aevi themselves.
Of course.
It would be for the global account an absolute must to serve the customer. So the enterprise would be served very well. The smaller Aevi would struggle with that as a result.
Yes.
That sort of conflict, and it was a pretty normal conflict to have in such an environment, of course, but that conflict is completely gone, because today, with a single shareholder, you only do what is right for Aevi.
Yeah. And so the bet that the CEO made at the time when you did get carved out, has that proven to turn out to be correct?
Yes, I do think so. I think that, and you see that with larger enterprises as well, that it's very, very difficult to start something completely new.
Right.
I'm not saying you can't do innovation, because there's lots of innovation going on, but but if it's really a high contrast from what you're doing today, it probably goes faster when you do it externally. You ring fence it and let them do, as much as they can do.
Yeah.
That worked partly for us, but like I said, there was so much overlap that it could have gone a lot faster.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't have had to keep that difficult balance.
Yeah, of course. We're seeing it play out in other areas, financial services and payments right now. Obviously, we all know about the Brookfield carve out of Barclays Payments, right? And I think right now, Barclays Payments is still aligned to the mothership, but at some point in the not too distant future, it will be aligned to the PE firm. Yeah. And they're in that difficult transition phase, right? It feels challenging.
Yeah, it will be challenging.
Of course.
One of the lessons as well that I learned there is that transition phase. So when you're on sort of the other side of the fence, you can only dream of, what if we one day are standing on our own 2 feet, and wouldn't it be great? And it is. But that transition phase takes much longer, and there is, no matter how you look at it, you always underestimate how much needs to be done in order to get there.
I bet. The grass is always greener, and it is in fact greener, as you say. That's always good to hear. So if you think about that, what do you think you underestimated the most when you look back?
But that's very specific to this scenario.
Yeah.
So if you are a startup or scale up that always started with PE behind you, you're used to this from moment one, which is you're measured in a different way. You need to really sort of look at the numbers there. Even after COVID, that changed even more drastically at that point. So if you start like that, you never knew the warm cushion of an enterprise that was there. So right. I think the contrast for us was really, really big. Where you say, oh, we can't wait to be alone, and then once you're alone, you got to go, oh, I'm actually missing these few components more than I expected.
Yeah,
and then it comes indeed to and we are very lucky as a company with our current share and stakeholders that they are very, very supportive. But that took quite a few pushes to get to that stage where, okay, we're now standing on our own 2 feet.
Yeah, I feel like that's probably quite a modest way of looking at it, though, right? You've got to get the runs on the board, I suspect, and the trust.
Yeah.
And then you're up on your way.
It's you really need to prove that. I think what also changed a lot for us is that at the moment you can determine own strategy, own culture,
of course,
but also own customers. That's when it all starts to slot into place, right? And you never realize how much freedom that gives you until you're really there. That's not dictated anymore. We very quickly came to the conclusion that, okay, this is what we don't want to do anymore. And we cut that out, which was a very painful exercise because we cut out more than we expected. So the results were initially not as good, and then you need to climb further. But once it's clean, we're now making a momentum that everybody has been waiting for. So
interesting. That's fascinating perspective. And obviously, in the midst of all of this, you stepped into the CEO role as well. How did that end up happening?
It's when I look back, I actually can't even tell you the exact moment because with shareholders coming on board, there was also, hey, this is now a carve out. We need to start looking for a CEO. There was a search. Initially, a colleague and myself said, look, we didn't know of each other. I would be interested to do that as well. At that point in time, it was a sign, really good, but maybe we need a bit more experience because it would have been the first, or it was the first CEO job anyway. And credits to both to all the shareholders that, look, we will help you, we will train you, you can do that. So that was a very fortunate position to be in.
For sure.
The search for the right person took a lot longer. And I think the big reason was also that balance we have been talking about. So you have one major enterprise shareholder and one PE who have those different perspectives. And if you come from outside, it will be so much more difficult to especially navigate the enterprise than it should be, of course. So it took, I think, several candidates and looking at people, and ultimately we ended up maybe a year, 2 years later, when the then shareholder said, "Look, Mike, would you still be interested to do it?" And we at that time had delivered the key customer with the smart devices already. We had some new customers signed up, so the whole company was moving in that direction. I didn't necessarily fully expect it still to happen,
right?
But grabbed it with both arms when it came, and didn't necessarily knew what I said yes to, but it was always in my head that, oh, what if I could take this and really show what is possible with it.
Amazing. And you obviously stepped into the CEO role from a kind of business development and commercial background, right? How did you find that transition?
I did both. I also did the product area, right? So initially that was product, and indeed also on the BD side. Although when you're that small, they're mixed anyway.
Of course,
it was a bit of a reality check, right? So you get in that position, and everything changes. I didn't expect so many changes, and that is not only in the activities, because, and I can talk about that at a later stage, but you need to learn what do you do and what don't you do, but it's also how people all of a sudden approach you.
Of course.
And I think I was very ignorant at the time because I was still me. And why do people then all of a sudden now start to communicate differently? That you can, later on, you realize as all of a sudden people start to work their agendas more, and that there's more opinions that you get. So why don't you just invest $500,000 here, or why don't you just fire a person there? And it's like, whoa, that's not necessarily what you initially want, but it's full on from moment one, and it's a big step change.
And what was the biggest surprise when you stepped into that CEO role, and also facing off to investors for the first time directly, private investors? What do you look back on and think, well, that was unexpected, but also a real learning curve?
Yeah, I think the way that people change their approach towards you and how they communicate, that is really something. When you're with the teams, you hear more, you see more. I think what surprised me was that you lose visibility very quickly, because
Right.
not everything is shared with you anymore for exactly those same reasons. So that is more operationally in the organization. Like I said, I think in the beginning, made a mistake. Mistake is a big word, but if you still operate from your different roles and it's a smaller context, when people come with a problem to you, you go like, oh yeah, we need to solve that, bosh,
Yeah.
right? You can't do that anymore. You need to take 1, 2, 3 steps back. You need to look at the bigger picture. You need to then see, okay, if I would knee-jerk react to that person, what would I break on the other side? And that was a very big learning exercise. I still sometimes fall in the trap. I think my team now knows for the bigger changes, whether that's organizationally or strategically, I will do my research and talk to different people, get different perspectives before listening to that one person and say, yeah, we'll go to the left today, right?
Yeah.
And that, I think the second part was what most people don't experience, and you kind of only experience in a CEO, CFO role, is the board meetings themselves.
Right.
The first ones were nerve-wracking. They were absolutely nerve-wracking because, and I say that semi-jokingly to everyone in the company. Everybody has a boss, and
of course,
at the board, those are my bosses, right?
Yeah.
So, like everybody wants to perform and do the right thing and show up really well,
right?
That's the same in the board. And in the beginning, it was very difficult or tricky to feel, okay, how do you communicate? And again, we were very lucky because we were guided really well by the board to say, hey, here's sort of how we would like to see it. This is what we see in our portfolio companies. And then you put your own stamp on it.
And you think part of that is because you were a new CEO and it was a new venture for them?
Yeah, it was. All components were new.
Yeah.
So that
doesn't help.
That was it. And later on, you of course you realize that you get used to it. Let me say it like that. I was going to say the pressure always stays on,
of course,
because all the nasty things that happen in the company or things not going exactly as you wanted, ultimately find their way there. And the things I personally dislike most is you put it all there, you start to correct things, you start to grow, you start to make things better, and then you go like, this is what I'm going to communicate today. And that's what you communicate. And 2 hours later, after the board meeting, it's like, hey, that one didn't work out, right? And it's pressure. It's a different form of pressure, I think, that most people think.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So the two things that you've talked about there, first of all, the communication piece, just to pick up on that for a moment, I think that also cuts both ways, right? So A, you probably get less information flowing up to you, correct, but also B, you're able to be less open with the people around you than you perhaps had been previously, right? For that exact reason you talked about.
Correct.
Decisions impact more parties in that CEO role, right? Which is in itself quite a difficult transition to make, isn't it?
It really is, and that put that then together with also the sort of type of activities you can and cannot do, or should not do. Let's say it like that.
Yeah.
That's where, just to give you another example, what I never realized, and it is partially culturally, but you'll see it in a lot of companies, is you have a situation happening, right? You, as the CEO, need to be involved in that, or you need to at least be aware of it and informed.
Yeah.
I've learned not to dive into detail now and help, quote unquote, help troubleshoot.
Right.
Because you influence the teams, you might send them in completely different directions because you say, hey, I think it might be that or it might be that. And you actually think you're helping, but you're wasting everybody's time because you don't know that stuff anymore.
Right.
And you need to let the teams do their thing and then come back to you. So that temptation to just step in a little bit deeper and get that communication yourself and be part of it. It's a very again a new balance that you need to create.
Yeah, and so that's really interesting. Then thinking about the board experience that you now have, that experience facing off to the investors, engaging with them on a regular basis. For someone stepping into that for the first time, what advice would you give them in terms of how to prepare for that and how to approach that?
It's all about people and relationships, right? Like I said, I was very lucky with my counterparts there, and we have a good relationship on a personal basis there as well, which helps. I think openness is key. You want to start with that, and we've been bitten by that. Everybody's is bitten by that because nobody wants to communicate bad news, right? So you always stay maybe a bit too positive, or you don't emphasize certain things. But I think that relationship is absolutely a relationship that needs to be built on trust. And it completely depends on who's on the opposite side there, but it is the human factor first, because finding ultimately the right board deck setup and stuff, which I was so afraid of, was really easy, right?
Yeah,
but it is, what can I say, what can't I say? I think the key is also in the communication, that no surprises, right? So don't wait till the last moment saying things. And when we have ours, I can say pretty much everybody is informed already, right? And that's it. But you need to learn that, because it's quite difficult to, and even a few months ago, we had a whole conversation. Hey, we need to go a bit more driven in this piece and a little bit less on the excitement area, because and you constantly need to be open for that dialogue to. But listen, don't assume, and build that. Does that make sense? Build that relationship.
Yeah, of course. And so, from your experience today, what do you think is different between the private investor relationship at the board level versus the corporate relationship at the board level? What are the different expectations there from what you've seen?
One of the major differences is that with the PE, they can decide there and then. It's really simple. So when I speak to them, they think something is a good idea. Yeah, they say, let's do it, or let's work a little bit on these angles and do a bit more homework, and or they say, no, that's not going to fly. It's really that direct and that simple. Where, when you have an enterprise, then that needs to often go to their management, to their board. So the delays of decision making are enormous, right? And this is exactly why we are currently very happy, because again, nothing bad against the time we had with the corporate, but payments is a lightning fast world in terms of how you have to act.
For sure.
Changes don't necessarily always go that quick in that industry, but you're either there and you do it, or you're too late. And so you need to have that very quick sparring decision making, and I do think that there are always decisions that take a little bit longer, but on the operational side, it's just refreshingly fast.
Yeah. Okay, so coaching question for a second here then. So we're talking about this from a perspective of corporate versus private investor, private equity. What about, so if you're in our shoes, where we are an independently owned business right now and we're preparing for private equity investment or growth capital investment, what do you anticipate will be the differences there as a kind of founder stepping into that, having been in those boardrooms? What should I be thinking about from that perspective?
Yeah, so I think as a founder, you're in a different spot, right? Because as a founder, you're, let's say it as it is, you're not necessarily used to many people telling you what to do.
Well, I have my co-founder.
Fair enough, but I'm assuming at the moment that you're on the same page 9 out of 10 times.
Yes.
And assuming you are very well in sync, so you don't necessarily need to prepare or reporting or extra steps in decision making and all of that, right? So I think especially for founders, it's you now have somebody else who has a voice, who has an opinion, that really counts. So that is a different ball game, I think. Not necessarily bad, but that's also why I say if you find the right match between the personalities,
Right.
then that can work extremely well. If that doesn't gel, then I think that's your biggest challenge there.
Yeah. Look, clearly, having got to know you over the last year or so, you're very much a relationship person, right? So I assume being in this CEO role where you are effectively, that relationship is key with your investors. Having that experience of kind of being a commercial guy who's out there building relationships with customers all the time is probably pretty handy in that respect, right? Versus someone who's maybe come into that role who hasn't had that real customer-facing experience through their career.
Yeah, I think I'm in that sense lucky to have done both, right? So being on the sales side, but also on the product side, the understanding of what customers want is equally important, right? So we have this major exercise at the moment is how you do need to provide this whole solution, and the game is always to find the pain point for the customer. Now, you need to be able to deliver that as well. So having that product knowledge of what your company or teams are capable of to confidently say in front of a customer, yeah, we can do that for you. And we make mistakes there as well, right? Going from a PS organization to a product organization and trying to find the middle between those two again. But I think as a CEO, if you can have experience from all those areas, that is
really
absolutely
helps.
great. That really helps. Even operations, because you can be as good as you want in the relationship with the customer. Your product is shiny. And in our case, if it fails several times when a merchant is trying to take payments in their shop,
Of course.
Because operationally we're not doing it well, it all stops very quickly. So you need to have at least an appreciation for all the areas in the company, I think.
I bet. And let's talk a little bit about, so the other interesting thing with this transition out of the corporate into the private equity investors is actually your revenue model really changed a lot as well, right? So shifting from hardware sales primarily to a SaaS-based revenue model. What actually needed to change in the business to enable you to actually make that happen?
So it's pretty much a whole business change, right? Because you go from focusing on hardware, which is a one-off revenue, maybe if you're lucky, a little bit of support, but a one-off revenue, to a SaaS/transactional model that is recurring, right? That is attractive for everybody. I think the biggest change commercially for us, and this is several years ago, we now have had different challenges and things we're focusing on, was of course that with hardware, every year you start from zero, right? that's it. With platform, with SaaS, at least you have an ongoing base. But that transition specifically, we came from quite a high revenue number to then the first year going on recurring revenues. There's a major difference all of a sudden then, right? So, and to get everybody on board on that is of course challenging, because there again the background of the enterprise can be what it is, hardware, where then the PE says, no, recurring is far more attractive. Let's go in that direction. And those are the conversations. And I think one of the other things, it changes your company operationally as well. So to partnerships, because we made our own hardware. So we were manufacturing in Asia. You had OEM manufacturing partners, or you had completely different legal regulations, everything around that. When leaving the hardware business to only focus on software, we lost a whole block of complexity there as well. So that was really nice.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and also the realization was, let's call that out, that other parties were already so good at that. So you have to ask yourself, are we really going to compete with with those guys, or is the smartness of our platform, does it sit in a totally different area? But you probably won't be surprised, but the amount of conversations that takes with how many people say, no, you can't give up hardware, or you can't be neutral. We need to have our own. Yes, but we also want the recurring revenues, and that's often the case, right? Often the case that people want everything.
Yeah.
And that is that's not a good situation to have, because we actually did try that for a little time against better judgment, but we did try that. And of course, you go like, no, we are hardware agnostic. We do everybody's hardware, but we also have our own hardware. And then we have the platform revenue. So customers go, well, if you're completely agnostic, why do you have your own hardware as well?
Yeah.
And all the other partners, the hardware partners, go, yeah, but for as long as you have your own hardware, why would we work with you? So it is, it's all those decisions that change an entire company very, very quickly.
But ultimately, the real driving force behind moving to a SaaS model is the value of each pound that you generate in revenue,
Absolutely.
right? So can you maybe just explain that for a moment as well?
Yes. So I think the major attraction in SaaS-based or transactional model is for SaaS, it's the recurring component of it. And the transactional model is more the success component of it.
Of course.
Right? So if the customer is successful, we are successful because we both grow in that in that direction. So it has a higher value for the investors, for the company as well. I think also the way the scaling works indeed is that you get a much higher margin on the SaaS fees and the transactions themselves, right? So that combined with the recurring model, there is not a lot of discussion to be had. And this is also why you see a lot of companies that were previously hardware only now also want to partner and set up those kind of platforms where they can,
for sure,
introduce a recurring component.
Yeah, it's we see it all the time. I think so. As you went through that process of transitioning, obviously it's very, very hard, right? You have to take the organization on the journey, your customers on the journey, your investors on the journey, and you have to be committed to it yourself. Right?
Yeah.
Were there any moments in there where you had any doubt about the direction that you were taking, or you questioned yourself?
Of course. I mean, especially when we were in the middle of it, and we were in the halfway house, right? Which wasn't the right one. But at that point, you already see that the one major customer we had fulfilled with the hardware initially, that was done. So we're still chasing the next one. So you see the hardware revenues go down, the platform not necessarily picking up,
right.
And then you're in this phase like, oh, have we done it right? And shall we turn back? But you can't anymore at that point in time, right? So it's okay to, I think, to doubt, but it can be very short, and then you need to push through, right?
Just execute.
But we definitely had that a few times, like, oh, should we have kept our own hardware, or should we have done the sort of platform revenues in a different way? And we're still constantly tweaking, but we made it out the other end. We're fully platform now.
Right. Excellent. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
And on that note, you're obviously doing you're doing business that everybody wants to do in a way that everybody wants to do it, and you are successful at it where others have failed previously. What's the major difference? How are you making that happen?
I think the one thing we're very strong on is we want to be and stay a neutral platform. And it's easy to say, but very difficult to do. Right? So we want to, for our customers, break down all those barriers that are in payments land, where parties say, no, you need to take everything from me, and then you're locked in. You can't go anywhere. So when we say, no, we are a neutral platform, it means that you can choose with what hardware you choose on the front end, what processing you choose on the back end, how you combine it, what loyalty, and all of that. And I think because we stick to that religiously, I think that makes a difference. However, if you look internally, of course, that's a difficult exercise because
Right.
if you have to enable, for lack of a better word, 10 different hardware devices.
Of course.
Yeah, you can only do so much in parallel. So there will be some that are earlier to market or not, and then so are you pushing certain devices or acquirers more than others? But we try not to do that, and we make it very, very clear to our customers and our partners that we have zero intention to compete with them, which is what you currently see in the market, right? Yeah, your partner tomorrow could be your competitor because of this consolidation that is going on.
Well, this is the challenge, though. So I understand the benefit of neutrality from a customer perspective. Yeah. That's obvious, but surely it must be very difficult to build the right partner relationships, given that you have a neutral platform.
Yeah, I think we thought that was more difficult than it turned out to be. That's right. One of your previous question. Have you had moments where you thought, "Oh, are we doing the right thing or not?" Right? This is also one of them because, yes, if you tell one partner, well, our platform enables your competitor to be at the same customer, they're not necessarily happy about that. But it works the other way as well. So customers they otherwise wouldn't have had, they might get the opportunity. And I think what we saw in our market is that one of the big players actually paved the way for us a little bit, which was Stripe. When Stripe said at a certain point, we allow sort of other competitive acquirers processors to be connected to our platform as well, you did have the effect through the market that especially retailers are becoming smarter. So look, I actually don't care what the acquirers say. I want 2, 3, or 4, and Aevi can enable that.
Yeah.
So then the dialogue becomes different with the partners. Say, hey, this is what customers want. So with us, you can do it, and you still need to fight for your own business. But what you lose here, you can win there. Yeah. But it's a huge balancing act, obviously.
I bet. And so you've got your vision. You know what you want to be. Neutral platform, SaaS-based business, ideally as much as possible. Then what do you prioritize first? Is it the product and the platform, or is it your go-to-market strategy and actually getting out there and starting to generate the revenue?
If you would have asked me this 2 years ago, we were fully on go-to-market and sell and trying to get it done. We've come a bit more to the middle there because, as I earlier said, the payments world is going really fast. And if they say, okay, I want your product, but then I want it today, you can't then necessarily say, oh, well, we positioned it with you, but it takes 6 months to get it ready. So we're actually now moving more to the back where together with the shareholders, we said, oh, we're having a few strategic programs. So we say, no, we're going to make sure that certain connections for us and to payment hosts, for example, and certain devices, they will be ready for everybody to start with. So that's actually answering your question. It's we're moving to the middle where we were too front loaded on BD in the beginning. Yeah. We have come from making everything custom, doesn't work either, right? To 100% purist product, that doesn't work either. To now in that balance that you can say, okay, yes, we can deliver everything you want. We do it in stages. This is what you can have today. Yeah, and then that's how we approach it. Correct.
Okay. So, the landscape in the payments world is changing all the time, and has done significantly over the last 10 years since Aevi has been in existence. What do you see as the kind of biggest changes over that period of time, and what's happening now that you're particularly excited about?
I am excited about the fact that sort of the orchestration that we do is now more and more seen as a foundational component for businesses, for retailers to do unified commerce. We've been talking about that for a very long time. We want to combine, but you see the drive in the market now that people go, no, I want to determine it myself. I want to have flexibility. I want to have choice. I'm not going to buy only a single stack and be locked in. That's it. And actually that accelerated over the last few years. So if you work back from the today, that's what I'm excited about. The last 2 years, 3 years maybe already. I don't know how long since COVID, but those years with all the geopolitical friction, tension in the world, many of our customers are asking, okay, I need to have it under my own control. I want resilience, so I want to know I have backup because you never know what's happening.
Of course.
I might want to have a supplier or a partner from a different region because I don't trust the region anymore. So that has all help sort of the quest for, I want to be independent. I want to make my own choices. I want to have a platform where if tomorrow something goes wrong, the day after tomorrow, I have an alternative. That's that. So that's one customer change that is coming in. I think what you also saw during COVID, but let's not go into that, but after, is that customer behavior has changed.
Of course.
Quite a lot. The way we feel that is that where before there were 2, maybe 3 people involved in the decision-making process, today, if it's 7, you're lucky.
Oh, really?
It is much more granular. The processes take longer. You need to convince more people. I'm very lucky to have a great CRO on board who from the moment he joined started a program. Said, guys, sales, business development has changed. Right? You cannot just focus on one person anymore. You need to approach a company with 10 person from our company, right? 15 to probably 20 people over there. Spread it. They need to see you on LinkedIn. They need to see you at shows. They need to see you at blog posts. They need to listen to podcasts. All of those things. And he names that, which I love, All Eyes on Aevi.
Right.
And that is, it's a whole new way of selling. And you see a lot of companies that haven't realized that yet. They're still trying to push like, oh, here's my product, here's my information folder, and it's a single line, but it's. I think the customers have become much more demanding in, I want information from via all channels. And a lot of it is also subconsciously. We had inbound now requests for, I've seen some of your posts now for 6 months on LinkedIn.
Oh, wow.
I want to know.
Tell me more.
What this is all about.
Right.
And maybe people listening will say, but we know that already, that you need to do stuff on LinkedIn. Of course, everybody knows that, but it's a much bigger and more intense approach to the customers than it was ever before.
What's changed for the customer then? Why do you think that change has happened since COVID? What's accelerated it?
That I don't know, and we just see it. And I talk to peers in the industry, also to bigger enterprise. Everybody says, in those bigger decisions, because they're big decisions,
of course,
they take even longer with more people involved.
True.
But can also not put their finger on why that all of a sudden is, and why that tipping point was after COVID. I can't answer that.
It's very interesting, isn't it? And so if you think about, we talked earlier about culture and the importance of building the right culture to do what you've achieved in the business today. So there's often that balancing act between putting the customer first and putting your culture and your people first, right? Where do you stand on that debate?
I'm trying to get rid of that debate.
Right.
Because the customer and the culture, or the customer and the people that sit in the culture, should be the same team. That's the point. That's the whole point. The moment that you have to choose between the two, that's where it goes wrong already. And I think, culture is really important. Culture also, it goes from we need to be proud of what we do to wanting the customer to win with our products, because then we win. Those kind of things are really important. The customer, you have your classic phrases like the customer pays your food on the table, which is very, very true. And I want everybody to realize that. But it is all about becoming successful together, right? So, and I do think that we are getting there, but that's an ongoing exercise, because you can always do better. You can always do. We've made our mistakes in the past where customers said, "Look, sorry, just not good enough." And I think everyone that's in a company recognizes that, right? So we don't all and only have happy customers, but it's what you do with it and how you fight back. And culture is a big part, but part of the culture should be the customer orientation.
Okay, and what role does strategy play? So in the sense, culture eats strategy for breakfast. How can that be true?
I'll give you an example. So we are coming out with a fantastic new solution, which I can't tell you here yet, but we are working literally day and night to make that successful for and with the customer. The team last week was still busy at 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning.
Wow.
You can have the most beautiful strategy in the world. If people are not committed, then it's paper.
Doesn't matter.
Then it doesn't matter. And we didn't ask the team to do that. The team wanted to do that because they know how important it is. They know how cool, for lack of a better word, it would be, or to see what they've worked on successful at that customer, to go live, be the first in Europe, and do that. So that doesn't mean that strategy is not important. We do a lot of work on strategy. Months ago, I rewrote a lot of the strategy together with the team, and we published that. And it's really funny. People within the company go like, "Oh yeah, we need to know the strategy." And the moment you publish it, then say, "Okay," and then they continue with their work of making things successful there. So strategy is super important. I think the most important thing with strategy is to be consistent and not change that every time. And I also get from internally like, "Oh, but we change the strategy all the time." No, don't confuse that. We didn't change the strategy for several years now, and we're finally going in that direction exactly as we said.
Yeah.
We do change a lot in how we execute on it.
Of course.
Right? That's the thing. But to come back to your question, I think you need to have the culture to be successful.
So if you take that example where your team are working 4 a.m. on a Saturday morning, how do you get them to do that? You know, like you say, it is about them being bought into what they're doing and excited by it and thinking it's cool. But there has to be a connect between what you know when you're setting this vision out and you're agreeing this with the customer, and then actually getting the team to execute on that. What are the practical steps there?
I can't tell you the steps because this is the result of years of work.
Right. Okay.
Where we have a fantastic lady running our people team, and the activities we do for people. Look, I have the philosophy that, you know, people spend the largest amount of time at work. So you better make sure it's a nice place to be, right?
Of course,
because that's already where it starts. We try to help people in all sorts of ways with their development. We can't always even pay the highest salaries. That's startup, scale up reality that you have. But you need to get a core group of people that just love what they do, that believe in it. And I had this same question internally a few weeks ago. And how do you do that? Well, you just can't do that sort of in a blanket way. Say from Monday everybody is motivated, right? It doesn't work like that. So you do need to. Everybody needs to find that one person in their team they can get on this journey, and then that person will find that other person as well. And before you know it, people start believing in what we're doing. And the bizarrest thing is that actually the teams and the culture and the can-do attitude became stronger in difficult times.
Right. That's really interesting. And is that what you've just said there about that everyone needs to find one person in the team? Is that an observation or is that an instruction that you give to people?
That was an observation, actually, that I now sort of use as an instruction, or to tell people that, find the next person. That is, and it links also into talking about culture as well. It also links into being fairly ruthless in terms of, okay, that person doesn't function, and you always see the good people will have a big opinion on the bad ones, and then you need to listen. So you have to say goodbye to the bad ones.
Yeah.
And then you get the question, why did you let them go? So you can never do it right. But the point is, I do believe in a lot of those, call them cliche statements or not, that if you don't take action, the first people you lose are the good ones.
Right.
So you better make sure that you nurture all the good ones. Have a talent program. Give them also, it took us a very, very long time, but we finally done it. Give them the equipment they can work with, right? Don't start to quibble about that. It sits in so many things to show we appreciate you. We value you. Right? We're going to be successful, and when we are successful, either on this project or with the company or something, then we will share that with you, and we hear you, right?
Yeah.
And I think you can summarize that in Sarah and I talk a lot about that, is just treat people like adults.
Of course. Simple as that. It's funny, actually. I find that the being ruthless part is a never-ending challenge, right? It's not an easy thing to do, but the way that I reconcile that is it's not necessarily good or bad. It's fit or no fit, right? And often the organization determines that before you do. Is my experience of it, and then it makes the decision a no-brainer. It's a step that you have to take to protect the culture that you've built, right?
Yeah, couldn't say that better. That's exactly how I see that as well. It's the other side of the coin is what we said in the beginning, that people, you do need to be able to distinguish between, and that's experience, right? When people do it for a certain agenda, or that's really the case. So that then circles back to, for us in the role we have, do your homework. Don't react to that single person, but really listen really to the organization, and no knee jerks, right?
That's very good. Yeah, I mean, you and I can talk about culture all day long, and I always get a lot of value out of talking to you about this. So as you look forward now, obviously AI is everywhere. You can't have a conversation without talking about AI, which is hence why we're talking about AI.
Yeah.
But if you think about, preparing for an AI-enabled world, what advice would you give to people who are kind of on their career journey right now? What do they need to think about? What do they need to do differently to prepare themselves for what's coming?
Again, and I don't want to sound quoting cliches, but whatever you do, embrace it, right? Because rebelling against it is not going to help you in any shape or form.
Right. Good advice.
And I even think that is, or especially think that's the same for our role. So I use AI. I use it a lot. But then again, when I said, as a CEO, you need to know sort of a little bit about everything, because not only how to use it, but I also need to know the legal impacts and what if it happens outside the company versus inside, those kind of things. But I decided, as I think you should do with a lot of things, lead by example. So I use it. I like I said, I use it a lot. I tell people that I use it. I even part of my background is still nerdy with development, so I want to understand what my developers have to go through, and just not in the detail. I can't even match them, but enough to say, guys, if we do this well, it will help us. And that's what we say in the company as well. So embrace it and see how it can become a tool set for you, rather than just rebelling against it, because it is there. People say it's going to happen. No, it's already there. You can't deny it.
It's so true, isn't it? I see a lot of people embracing the tools. I think there aren't that many organizations yet that are really embracing it at like an enterprise level, though, right? There's a lot of kind of use cases. There's probably more discussion around what it could be rather than realistic opportunities that are being realized right now.
Yeah, I think we are a bit further than that. So our CTO has a whole program for this year, but it's a whole program.
Yeah.
So this is not only engineering. This is legal. This is the people team. This is anything. And we started, as everybody should, really simple. So as a tool. So can the tool help us with cleaning up all the job descriptions that you need to have in a company, right?
Yeah.
And make a template and show us what we have, what don't we have, compare contracts. But ultimately, for a business like ours, which is of course software, super technical, you can't beat the analysis skills and stuff. But I think people need to really focus on learning how to use it properly, because then it's at the moment certainly not a threat. We look at it from a point of view that it allows people to focus on the things we like to do that are cool, and the mundane work can be done by AI. That's already one area.
Right.
We can immediately improve quality and speed. And for a company like ours, for argument's sake, you have 100 developers. Well, ultimately, using the tools well, they can do the work of 200, right? And
Absolutely,
that's how we currently see it.
For sure. I spoke to a CTO yesterday who is building an engineering organization, and he said a couple of years ago he would have needed to hire 3 times the amount of engineers to do the work that he's planning to do, and now it's 3 times less, which is massive, right?
Yeah.
But they still have to prove that out now. That's now got to be scaled up, which is the challenging part.
I think depending on the kind of company you are. So for your in our case, for the current base of developers, I still see us grow in terms of developers.
Yeah.
And like I said, developers that can do more, better quality, because quality can always be improved, and have a slightly easier life. Now, does it change certain things, right? Yeah, because you need to make sure that you instruct the tool really well, because we also burned ourselves big time and saying, well, if you let it go on the wrong bits, then it can do a lot of damage as well, right?
Absolutely.
So
yes. Very good. Well, look, we've come to the quick fire round. So a few final questions for you. So I hope you're ready. First one, best decision you've ever made?
Best decision I've made was investing in myself.
Excellent. Can you expand on that slightly?
Yes. I very quickly, I was until a few years ago of the opinion that I didn't need coaching, for example.
Right.
Or that I was always too busy with operational stuff and didn't have the time to read. And we had this discussion once. When you realize that actually it's really good to learn what you don't know. You don't know what you don't know, so you need to go and find out. And you then start to invest in yourself that I'm going to read up on this. I'm going to make time to listen to audiobooks for whatever your thing is.
Yeah.
But also, I have a fantastic coach, and she helped me with so many things, just to invest in myself, to learn to look at things from different viewpoints, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
Because especially when you take on the job at first, that you will be lived, right? There is no time. And if you don't carve out time to do something for yourself, work on yourself, then at a certain point you come to a grinding halt.
You're talking to me directly there. That really resonates, but it's that's a really good one. And what's your biggest regret?
Well, that's almost cheeky, not having done that earlier, because I now, since I'm doing this, I now can actually look back at certain time frames where I go, God, I wish I had that knowledge or that tool or whatever it was at that point, because life would have been so much easier, or I would have made a different decision.
Of course. Okay, and what do you think is the most overrated part of being a CEO?
The glamour.
But you live a glamorous lifestyle, right?
Yeah, that's what it looks. I think people see the or like to think that it's all glamour and it's all big negotiations and it's all the really important stuff. Where I think a lot of it is actually guiding the team very subtly. So seeing what's going on. You like I said, you don't necessarily get involved with topics, but you nudge people to get the best out of the teams, to get the best performance. And being a bit everywhere is quite a busy job.
Of course.
And that's also desk work, right? That's not always
For
being
sure.
on travels and stuff.
No, it's sometimes the hard work, isn't it? It's the micro corrections, right?
It is the micro corrections that make the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you love most about your job today?
It's the impact you can make. And that goes for everything, right? The impact you can make through the company for your customers, because you can actually determine pretty much everything.
Right.
The impact you can make for the people at your company, as we said, culture-wise, or they love to be working at Aevi. But also the impact it has on my own life, and it's quite rich, because we were joking, it's not all travel, but it's still a lot of travel. You see a lot of the world. It's in terms of relationships and your horizon. It's just a fantastic job to have.
I love your positive outlook. It's amazing. Last one. So what advice would you give to your younger self starting out?
Start earlier with the things that are good for you already, or even to eliminate the bad things, right? So coming back to a question you asked earlier, I think a mistake we all make in a lot of situations is that we know something's not right, and we still wait for way too long to do something about it. So, and that could be in business, because it could be in private life as well. Coming back to the previous questions where you said, I knew already, like, I need to start reading books because, I want to know more about this because it makes my life easier. So it's act quicker. And that maybe a lot of people listening say, yeah, but I do that already. No, when you sit down and you really start to think about the many things that you should do. So the you can read the 7 Habits of Highly Efficient People, but it's the category of what is important but not necessarily urgent. And it's really, really true. If you can get a better handle on that, and I still haven't mastered it, so I'm sitting here telling you that, but that's an ongoing thing. Yeah, it's the important urgent is easy. You jump on it, and then it's the rest of the fluff you need to skip. But the things that you that you should do today, do them.
Do them. Excellent. Well, that's sound advice. Thank you very much, Mike. Thanks for coming on to the pod.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you.